And you also have various other events going on which are done, which are actually taking place by the Home Minister in Bombay regarding same Article 370. I said no, so I'm going to do that. So let's start with Manishan, who is from the legislation and understands the Constitution of India far better than me. Please, Manish, explain to the audience what exactly 370 and 35A are, and what are the economic opportunities and the benefits to our country, to our state, because of this latest supersession.
Thank you, Rachna.
Hello.
Yeah, now it's okay. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Rachna. So, I would like to edit the question a bit. So, as I think all of us has seen loads of debate regarding 370, 35A, whether that has been done legitimately, not been done legitimately. I'm not getting into that controversy. Today, the fact remains that the new reorganization bill has been culminated into an act, and today there are two union territories which exist. Today there are 106 central acts which has been made applicable in both the union territories. There are 153 acts which were earlier there in J&K that has been repealed, and there are 166 acts which are continuing there, remain as it is. So the best part of it, considering today's agenda, which is peace and happiness, seeing this entire perspective, as far as what my personal opinion on this entire issue is, that today I see it as one flag, one constitution and one nation. Considering this, means if I go back to my law days, we used to study statute, and Manoj used to study with me, and we used to study there, and right when we start any of the act, there was one line mentioned that this act is applicable in entire India except the Jammu and Kashmir. अब मुझे लगता था कि भाई ये क्या है, अब नए नए लॉ में आए हैं, मीन्स लाइक I was really confused at that point of time. Understanding 370 at that point of time was not our cup of tea as such. Yes, over a period of time we realized that what is the exact situation. Today I think, means for any good civic society, the requirement is of a sound legislative reforms. And if I compare between the two, and once I have been invited to this particular topic, I have again gone through the debate, parliamentary debate on the subject, and I then applied my own independent view that what is exactly, whether what has been done will be good for the nation as a whole, whether it will be good for J&K, whether it will be good for the Union Territory of Ladakh. So my answer to is yes, it will. And the reason is quite clear. Number one, as I see that the first and the foremost agenda of the entire nation, and that has been the agenda, political agenda as well, that is the corruption. So corruption laws, number one. Number two is women and child development, and number three is national security. I think that these three issues are the major and the core issues which are the concern not for the J&K but for the entire India. And these three things has been taken care by the legislative reforms in the form of various statutes and enactments. Earlier, if we see, there were certain legislative enactments which were not applicable in J&K because of Article 370 and 335A. But now it is applicable. And the first example which I would like to give is your Corruption Act, Prevention of Corruption Act. The Prevention of Corruption Act earlier, prior to this amendment, was not there in Jammu and Kashmir. And if we see, I will be now talking about the figures, that from 2004 till 2019, the central government has granted somewhere around 3 lakh crores rupees, infused 3 lakh crore rupees in Jammu and Kashmir. I have personally visited Kashmir, I have personally visited Jammu and Kashmir and various areas. If you see the development out there, vis-a-vis the amount which has been infused by the central government out there, is like totally disproportionate. And now, if the reason is quite apparent, if the money has been infused and that was not been taken up by the J&K earlier, but now with this particular legislative reform being taken up, I think the things can be handled well, because now Benami transaction is one of the very wise step which the government has taken in past. That this particular enactment was also not been made applicable there. And I think there is a requirement of the Benami Transaction Act to be made implement in J&K, which has been done now, help us out to tackle the terrorism out there under the garb of Benami transactions. Apart from that, now let us just come to the child and women development. So one of the very vital move which the government has taken in recent past I will say, is triple talaq. This triple talaq is formally a bill or act now, is formally known as the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019. So I have again checked while I was just preparing for this. So I just saw that whether this was, because Jammu and Kashmir is obviously there is a predominantly a Muslim majority area. So whether this particular enactment will be applicable there or not. Whether the J&K prior to this entire thing has made this particular enactment implemented within that particular state or not. So the answer again is no, except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But now, this particular liberal law, which will add to the empowerment of women, which will take away the grievance, the personal domestic grievance of the woman, has been taken care by virtue of this implementation in J&K. Apart from that, is when we talk about the child development, the education plays an important role. And in this area, the government earlier in 2009 came up with the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2019. Shockingly, I don't know the reason that there were active government at that point of time. They have all the liberties to take this particular law implemented in J&K. And despite of the fact the government is coming up with the grants to do that, but that has never been implemented. I don't know the reason. The reason might be that the situation in J&K, which is prevailing for last 70 years, that is underdeveloped, full of poverty, that should remain same. I think that might be one of the reasons. But now, after this particular enactment, after these two UTs now in force, the children out there will get the benefit. They will have the right to education from 6 years to 14 years of political activity and storing of arms and ammunition. So, if we see in totality, means like these are certain prominent acts which I think that I must share it with you, that these will definitely, if at all, is enforced with true spirit, I think will definitely bring peace and happiness in Jammu and Kashmir and also in the Union Territory of Ladakh. Last but not the least is when we talk about Article 370A, 370 and 35A, I again put a question to myself, that what are the privileges which has been taken away and what the people of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are getting in place of it. If I see the privileges, predominantly the special status, their permanent residency, and that too, that particular status was not in favor of women out there. Women marrying outside the state, their children are deprived of the property rights out there. So, with this particular privilege, which was there, which they were enjoying under the garb of Article 370, under the garb of Article 335A, what development, again I just put a question to the entire panel also, I think that will be answered by the panel today, that what actually this privileges has added to the development of J&K in last 70 years. There is a loads of hue and cry on that particular issue, but I just want to be aware about this. If anybody out here within the panel and otherwise can enlighten me, because there has to be a healthy debate on this particular element, that how these privileges has helped. So now this is one side of it, and if we see the other side of it, that what we were being deprived of, what the J&K people were deprived of, they were deprived of the better infrastructure which can be created by public-private partnership. I pose a question to the public sitting out here. The scrapping of the article would have been interested in investing money in J&K. I think you would have never thought about it, but now I think you might be thinking about it. So this is the answer. The J&K is the integral part of India, no doubt about it. We are one, it is one nation. We invest money in Goa for a villa. Why not in J&K? And forget about the leisure things. In fact, in terms of the industrial development or whatever, have we ever, any industrialist has thought about it? Not at all. But now, what I think the people are discussing, and I am from the Harvard community, I used to be in discussion with various entrepreneurs, and I think there are loads of healthy discussions going on the aspect of investment post this government move. So in totality, what I just want to say is, just 20 years before, when the computer was introduced in India, and I think majority of you will agree to this, there were loads of hue and cry at that point of time that we will lose our job. But whether that has happened, I don't think so. The things are getting progressive. We are getting progressive. So this disruption, this instant disruption, I would take it as a positive disruption in the interest of nation, in the interest of peace, in the interest of happiness. I think now the people of J&K, they will get under the shelter, under the umbrella of these legislative reforms being made applicable, and the government is quite serious to just enforce this law very candidly, very vigilantly out there. I think जो जिसका शेयर है वो उसको मिलेगा, जो पैसा वहां जाएगा वो उस चीज के लिए खर्च होगा, पंचायती राज वहां पर अब आने वाला है, जो डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन है, डेमोक्रेसी का जो एक्चुअल आपको प्रमाण है वो वहां पर देखने को मिलेगा. So this is what my viewpoint is. Thank you very much.
That was very, very comprehensive, and it was required, because I think we all know very little about it from really well in corporate mergers and acquisitions. So what is the global point of view on this law, and how do you see this opening up opportunity?
There is pursuit of conflict is what we look for. But having said that, I think there is enough law that Manish has already given all of us, and how 370 and 35A actually is going to be good for J&K. I'm going to actually take it in a different way. I'm going to take it from a point of view of saying, not purely from a corporate law perspective, but also from a spirituality perspective, since that is the main theme of your evening today, is that if you think of humanity in general, I think when energies flow together is where you find, it started with communities, it started with, in fact, law comes out of religion. The whole concept of people coming together is how the civilizations came together. And that whole concept of, so I'm going to speak about that for a little bit. I don't think I have 5 minutes of content, but I will give it to you from my heart. We need to go a little bit into the history to understand, and I think there was a certain objective. Maybe it was preservation, and I think when you look at generations, in fact, I certainly don't want to talk about the new generation because it makes me feel old, but I will tell you that as we look at our generation of our parents and we look at ourselves, and I look at the millennials, one of the key differences that we have is, I feel like, and I think every generation feels this way, is that we are the squeezed or the sandwiched generation. Our parents' generation, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this, was all about preservation. Primarily because they came from a whole different era where there was a need to preserve wealth, where there was a need to, I've heard my parents talk about, don't talk about good things to others. Because the moment you do that, it's almost like you're bringing on a curse from others. So it was all about hiding information. It was all about preserving wealth, preserving yourself, preserving your life. And that's totally understandable because as you would go across the history in the world, there was a point in time when people needed to do that, primarily for purposes of protection. And I think the reason I'm even talking about this is that when we sort of go back in history, at the time when Kashmir was acceded or signed the instrument of accession in 1935, when all the states signed the instrument of accession, Kashmir and Hyderabad were the 2 states which actually did not sign, and there were a few other states that actually stayed independent. And the reason Kashmir actually came into signing the instrument of accession was actually out of fear. It was out of the fear of invasion by Pakistan, which led a conversation into discussion between India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and Hari Singh and Sheikh Abdullah at that point in time to find out how they could protect themselves, because they were looking to stay independent. However, clearly the independence was not was something that they were fearing threatened by way of invasion, and that's where the discussion started, and that's where the instrument of accession started from. And I think the reason I'm even speaking of this is to understand that often objectives that with which you start over the years get diluted. And the reason I'm sort of bringing a symmetrical thinking here between the generation of our parents, which was all about protection and preservation, as to why they should be getting the privileges and which I never had. But I give in primarily because I can't treat them any differently. I live in a nice place, so they have to live with me. I can't have them live away from me. So they're enjoying the wealth, and they don't understand the concept of preservation, they don't understand the concept of wealth creation, and they understand the concept of integration. That's where you have social media, that's where you have all the things we actually talk about. And so when we talk about integration, that is the way of life. That is the way of progress. It has certainly brought people together to be able to harness each other's talents, which is why you see things becoming cheaper. The reason I often wonder, in fact, in my law firm, we hire a lot of millennials, and you come across, initially I used to be completely taken aback in terms of their thinking style, but now I have said, those are the cards that are dealt to you and you must understand them. And one of the main things that comes out of them is enjoyment of life through being with people. There is a lot of exchange of ideas, there is a lot of flow of relationships, there are apps that are actually created for that purpose. So integration is fundamentally a fundamental aspect or a core principle behind what I would call as peace and happiness. Now I'll come to the economic part of it. I think once that aspect is understood, it allows for flow of any place where you have water stagnating. You only get stench, you get diseases, you get other things. But once you let it flow, when you let water flow, when you let the velocity of money flow, that's where you see prosperity. And there are enough examples of that in the world. For example, the European Union is a very, very good example. You had a number of countries which were independent of each other, but when they came together, there is certainly, the reason they came together was because they believed that the flow of labor, the flow of capital, and the ability to acquire land in other countries is certainly going to be is going to help in development. And it has developed, it has helped in development. There are some issues that are coming up with the European Union. I also want to bring into prospect that I spoke about Kashmir and Hyderabad as being the two states that did not sign the instrument of accession. Interestingly, Hyderabad ended up signing much earlier than what we are seeing with 370 and 35A. And that happened literally in 1949 with Operation Polo, where they signed up to India and they integrated into India. And you have Hyderabad in front of you versus Jammu and Kashmir. It's a fantastic, the reason I want to bring this up is because Hyderabad today is actually the 4th largest state in terms of contribution to GDP. It is the 93rd largest state in the world.
Union Territory Chandigarh. I'm representing Union Territory Chandigarh. I'm a public prosecutor for Union Territory last many years. So, and being as a government lawyer, being a criminal lawyer, it's very difficult for us to attend the all function, but it's a the topic is 370 is a very difficult to speak about this topic. But especially Rachna and Dr. Lal is coming to the function. And this is the reason, okay, no, my child is only 1.5 month old. So I said to my wife, I requested my wife, I must go there. That's why I'm here. We lawyer research work, we have lots of research work. And I deliver lecture in CBI court charges. I deliver lectures to various IPS officers of this country. I was in United Nations and deliver lecture in Columbia, lots of top universities of the world.
Feeling a little out of place here because I'm almost thinking like I'm back in college and I'm in my political science lecture. But thanks a lot. I appreciate this as a citizen of India, but up till now I didn't understand it as well as you guys made us understand. So, I'm a journalist who's written on art and culture, and I run a PR company, but my labor of love is that for the last 10 years I've been working with nearly 50 royal families of India who have revived the culture of palace karkhanas. They bring in local artisans who were dwindling otherwise, and mostly the conversation when you talk about royals in books is about how many imported cars they bought, how many Dior or Chopard necklaces, but actually they really help the local craft to thrive. And the royal family of Kashmir, actually it's Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, and they are Dogri royals, Hari Singh's family. And they have done a lot already in keeping the orchards alive. They have actually revived Jammu Pashmina, which was forgotten. And they've done a lot of work very quietly. The daughter Jyotsna is an artist, so she's reviving enamel work within there. But today what I felt when Rachna asked me to speak, I wanted to narrate this interesting incident. I met this group of UN professionals who were with them. I went to Karachi and they were talking about using craft as a way to provide livelihood to women so that they can work at home and they don't have to walk into landmines, they don't have to be molested or raped, and they are not troubled. And a similar project was happening in Afghanistan with the blue stone that they developed. there was a lady from the UN, and then a similar project was happening in Karachi with the local artisans, and also a similar thing was happening in Madhubani, which is close to the border. So I think Kashmir, if we are open and we are able to invest, a lot of people should actually go there and look at so many crafts prevailing there, and so much of development also within the craft is happening which nobody knows about. So I think I'm hopeful that people like Good Earth, like Fab India will go there now. We'll also try and work with more royals there, because currently we were only working with Hari Singh's family, but we would like to work with more people. And I think more and more craft development projects should be given to women to work within their house, bring up their kids, and develop and take it to the world and provide them a market so that they can actually come out and work, and that will be very, very good. That's
Yes, there is. I would like to share with you. There is a village called Dardpura in Srinagar on the border. That village actually only has widows, and it is because obviously a lot of them, either their husbands have died, or that their sons are no more, or they were either killed in cross-firing, or they were killed because they did not want to be a militant. So the entire village only has women. So there is so much opportunity for you, because there are a lot of people who have gone there and spoken with them and created, especially BBC and all these international media who goes there, takes a video of them. They are fed up of it. 30 minutes, 40 minutes videos have been taken just to make viral content across the globe, and has actually done nothing for them. So if you go there, they're absolutely hostile to anyone else, anybody, even talking to them now, because they're like, no one really has done anything for us except them creating content for their media and TRPs. So yes, all the women here, anybody who's working for upliftment of grassroots women, and if you come across NGOs or other people who are planning to work, please go to Dadpura and do something about these women. Thank you. My next question to you, Sakshi, is the automotive and mobility industry, which you are so close, right? And you know that it has had trouble sometimes to grow in J&K because it was an absolutely closed market. So how do you see it getting better for you? You have miles, self-driving cars, easy cabs, cars on rent, etc. And how do you see, what are the kind of products you think you would launch, or the automobile industry can launch now in the state? In the Union Territory, I correct myself.
Thank you, Rachna. This is completely echoing your opinion. This was a masterclass for us to understand what's happening. So this was like a masterclass for us to understand what's really happening in J&K. I belong to a generation where when we were growing up, when we were kids, our parents took us to J&K, to Kashmir for a holiday, had a beautiful time. Then after some time, everyone stopped going to J&K, and all that we heard was, well, it's not safe, something happened, there was a bombing, whatever. And there were all of these stories that came in. A few years ago, actually, I revisited J&K, and that's like my real visible memory, because as a kid, I was 4 years old, I barely knew what the problem was. And it was always like this distant place. And then we used to hear about how it is called the Switzerland of India, and how J&K is the Switzerland of India. And then we went to Switzerland, and then we realized, really, that's the kind of place that exists? And the trains in Switzerland used to say Yash Raj, and Yash Chopra's name was written in there. And what really happened was that it was the tourism in Switzerland improved because Yash Chopra decided that because he couldn't shoot in India that much, he needed to find another territory that was as beautiful. That did not happen because of whatever was happening in Kashmir. I think when I talk about automotive in particular, I come from an industry that promotes discovery, that promotes travel, that promotes exploration of different territories, that promotes the idea of exploring this.